Justin Sua, welcome back to the Mindset Advantage podcast. And thank you for celebrating 500 episodes with me. I couldn't think of anybody better to be on the show with me. You were on the show back at episode 41, I think it was 2018. And 7 years later, here we are. So thank you for coming back on the show. Thank you for being a continued mentor of mine. And thank you for celebrating number 500.
Congratulations. I am so excited for you. 500 episodes is incredible. It's a testament to your commitment, your tenacity, your curiosity. I love listening to your podcast. It's funny. I just got a text message today from a buddy of mine who sent me a clip of your podcast, and he has no idea that we're friends. And so you're changing lives, brother.
Thank you so much, man. I'm really looking forward to this conversation today. I look forward to all the conversations we have. Every time I'm done talking with you, Justin, I always feel like a fire in my belly and excited and energized. And you have that power. I'm so excited for you to share that with my audience today. And as this is kind of a special episode, it's episode 500. And sometimes when we hit these milestones, whether it's a birthday or years at a company, sometimes it's fun to kind of look back at where you've gone. And one of the phrases you taught me a long time ago was the best athletes and performers, they zoom in to see the process, they zoom out to see the progress. And sometimes it's so fun to compare where you used to be and look at where you are now. So, all of that to say, as you look back at the last 2 decades, and I give you a chance to reflect back and look back in the rearview mirror, what's a moment in your career in the last 2 decades that is really memorable for you, being around some of the best coaches and athletes? There's so many. But as you look back, as I look back the last few years, what's something that pops up? You're like, man, that was cool. That was awesome.
Oh, that's such a good question. And my mind goes into so many different experiences and so many thoughts. I think I'll land it more towards myself as a practitioner. I think early on, when you're just getting started as a leadership performance advisor or mental skills coach or any industry, I think coaches in general as well, when you're young and you're new, you have this bundle of tools, this backpack of things that you want to give to people. Hey, let me teach you this skill, this tool, this tactic, this technique. And early in my career, I remember trying to shove mental skills and strategies and tactic down people's throats because that's all I knew. But the further along I go, as 5 years pass, 10 years, 15 years, then you start to realize that no, my role isn't to tell people what to do. It's to provide a safe place for us to explore together. There's a lot of, and to respect their experience and their expertise. And rather than be the answers guy, to be more of the questions guy. And you and I have discussed this. If you want better answers, ask better questions. And I think that's how I've evolved as well. Instead of trying to look for the best answers, just really honing in on being a better question asker. And it's been so useful and helpful, not only to me, but to those I work with. And what's really cool is in the process, we're both working together. We're having these generative conversations where we're generating answers together and it bubbles to the top. There have been many moments when I've asked a coach or a parent or a player, and I'd ask them after an answer they give, I'll say, have you shared that with anyone before? And so many times they'll say, no, I didn't know I knew that. And that's always fun when we're in the discovery process together.
You and I have a passion for asking questions. And sometimes when we're on the phone with each other, it's just back and forth questions, which is kind of funny for other people maybe listening in. I'd be curious if we were to keep the coach and whoever the person is, we'll keep them in the dark here. But what's a moment where you've asked some questions to a coach and you were able to bring them to some self-discovery? I think a story would be so great for the listeners to hear. We talk a lot on the show, Justin, about the power of questions. And I think people understand the power of it and why to do it. Could we kind of tag along a story of what it looks like, maybe at a really high level in the professional setting for you?
Yeah, I think I'll just give you a recent story. I work with some NFL coaches, and it's always difficult to. It's easy to have conversations after a win, after a winning streak. But what a lot of people don't realize is in our profession, we need to have those conversations and hard conversations during losing streaks and after a very difficult and emotional losses. When there is a loss, many people want to stay away from the boss's office, stay away from the head coach's office. But yourself and myself, that's when we go in to the office not because we lost, but because that's the process. That's the system. You go in after a win, you go in after a loss. And I would think recently there was a tough loss, and the next morning we show up at the building at 6 o'clock in the morning, waiting for the head coach of an NFL team to walk in, and then you're thinking, okay, do I walk in? How do I do this? How do I have this conversation? And then you say, tell myself, all right, just go in and get to it. I walk in and he's at his desk, and you can obviously tell it's frustrating. It's not even 24 hours after a very difficult loss. You walk in and you start with the questions. It's not how are you feeling, what's going on. It's what are you working on right now. So what's next, and what's frustrating you. And one of the things that I don't like to do is I don't like to do small talk with coaches right out the gate. So how's the family? How are the kids and the wife? It's let's get right into it. And so this moment in particular, walk in and say, the first question I said is, so what's the process now? That was literally the first question I asked. So what's the process now? And he was looking at tape. He was watching. He was on the laptop going over plays, and he took his hand off the clicker and took a deep breath, and he goes, okay, this is the process now. And then he went through what it was. And I don't know if he had pre-planned it, but it was nice to be able to direct his attention to what are we going to do about it? And then after that, the next question was, who are some people you need to have hard conversations with? And he thought about it for a moment. He goes, I need to talk to this person and this person and this person. Question number three was, okay, who do we need to encourage? Who do you think is down on themselves and you need to encourage? He thought about it and then went through his list of people he needs to encourage. And then the next question was, okay, as a leader, as a head coach, what kind of energy, what kind of attitude do you want to convey to the team? Because everyone's going to mirror your attitude and your energy. How do you want to be going throughout this week? And he went and he talked about it. And then we went on to other conversations from there. But that was a very recent conversation I had with the head coach. And there have been many, many, many conversations with major league managers and coaches and NBA coaches and golf coaches. But the most memorable are the ones that are during very difficult times. And that was one that was most recent. And a lot of times they don't go as smooth as that. I'll never forget, I had another one that I'm thinking about. We were going over Kim Scott's Radical Candor.
Yeah.
And I'm talking with a coach, and we're looking at the quadrants, radical candor, obnoxious. There's basically it's the relationship between warmth and challenge, and you want to have high warmth and high challenge. That's ideally where you want to be. So I'm talking to a coach, and he's looking at the graph that Kim Scott shows, and he goes, "Sua, where do you think I am on this graph?" On this graph with players, with my position group. He was talking about a player in particular. And I said, to be absolutely honest, I think you're in the bottom right quadrant. And the bottom right quadrant was something about obnoxious. I forgot what the other word is. Essentially, it's high challenge, low warmth. So essentially, I told him, I said, you challenge him a lot, which is great, but I don't think he realized how much you care. If a coach could punch me in the face, this was the moment. This was the moment where I literally thought I was about to get punched. And he completely disagreed with me. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not there to listen to their conversations. I don't have access to their text messages. And I just wore it. And I was like, no, that's fair. That's fair. But you asked me my opinion. And based on my observation, that's what I thought. I obviously know I have a lot of blind spots. And then we parted ways. He walked away. I walked away. And I thought to myself, this is not good. This isn't going to be good for our future relationship. And starting to question myself, was our relationship strong enough to bear the weight of truth? And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, and so then I go to the food room to go eat, and he goes to the food room to eat as well. Now we're the only two in the
Oh,
food
no.
room. No one else is there.
Oh,
I'm like,
no.
what are the chances? There are 100 people in this organization, and him and I are the only people in the food room eating. He's on one side, I'm on the other side. I feel uncomfortable. I don't know what he feels. He's probably angry at me. And so I'm sitting there, fake looking at my phone, like while my heart is pounding. I'm like, what? I'm not going to leave because I'm just going to sit there. I was just eating. And next thing you know, I see out of the corner of my eye, he gets up and he comes and he sits across from me at the table. And he goes, "Hey, Sua." He goes, "Hey, what's up, Sue?" I was like, "What's up?" He goes, "I've been thinking about what you just told me." And he goes, "Okay, so how do I show that I care?" And I take a deep breath and I was like, "Bro, I just want to say sorry. Like I didn't mean to like offend you." He goes, "No, no, no." He goes, "No, no." He goes, "No." He goes, he goes, "If I can, if that's what your opinion is, I value your opinion. Okay, what are some things I can do to show that I care?" And the two examples that I just gave you were two very difficult situations that had two very different responses from coaches I highly respect, and things ended up being okay afterwards. But those were just two examples of the power of asking questions and leaning into difficult conversations.
I love it. What if we were to look at the coaches? How can coaches do a better job at asking questions? I know it's very game specific, situation specific. Sometimes we don't have a lot of time. I gotta tell you what you need to know because there's 20 seconds on the clock. Other times there's time for questions, but yet we don't resort to questions for a multitude of reasons. How can we know how advisors can do it? How can coaches do a better job at leveraging questions? What have you seen from some of the best coaches you've been around on the ability to ask questions?
Yeah, I have a comment about it right off the top of my head, but actually I'm curious about what you would say to that. You have so much experience working with athletes and working with coaches. How have you done that?
That's something that I work tremendously hard on is getting coaches to ask questions. And I think one of the things that holds coaches back, Justin, from doing it is perhaps the amount of time. So in high school, which is typically the realm that I'm in, the arena that I'm in, they don't have as much time as per se the pro or the college athletes. And so because of that, they feel like there isn't enough time to ask questions because it's going to slow things down. And so what I try to break down with them is kind of this metaphor of a slingshot. Yes, it's going to slow things down for a moment as we pull that slingshot back. But what's going to happen is when they come up with this answer and this self discovery on their own, we're going to let go of that slingshot and we're going to start going further than we could ever go because we took the time to slow down. Now, that sounds good. The imagery is cool, but it's another thing to actually apply it. So, one of the I think barriers is perhaps it takes more time to do so. And I think coaches kind of they want to be able to flex. I know what I'm doing. I'm the coach. I can just tell you and it'll be faster. So one of the things I try to help coaches overcome is yes, it might be a little bit slower. However, it's going to be more sticky when the student athlete can come up with it themselves. So that's what comes to my mind first.
Yeah, no, I really like that. I think you brought up a really good point in terms of the time constraints. There's not a lot of time at any domain. And to your point, you want to show that hey, we are here to help you save your precious resources of time, energy, and attention. And I think some ways to navigate that I've learned through trial and error, through sometimes good experiences, sometimes bad experiences on how to support coaches with this is number one is a principle is the questions you consistently ask the players become the questions they consistently ask themselves. I got a text message from a player recently and he said, "Thanks for the conversation." Now, mind you, plot twist, I haven't spoken to this player in like 4 months. And he texted me, "Thanks for the conversation." And I knew exactly what he meant. I asked the same questions to a lot of the players. What are you working on? What's your objective today? How are you getting better? What's something you learned today? What are you doing well? Very consistent with the questions. And when he said we had a great conversation today, that told me that he was asking himself those same questions. So if you're a coach and you're thinking, "Oh, I don't have time to do it," you do have time to do it. You can just practice. What are some questions you want players asking themselves? And just have a set of two or three questions that you're constantly asking them. Hey, what do you focus on? Where are your eyes right now? What are you working on? What are you doing to be a great teammate? How are you going to positively affect the team? It could be that's it. And so that's one. Be consistent with questions you ask them. Another thing you can do is you ask yourself, what is it? I was just with an NFL team the other day, and I was talking to the coaches, and we were discussing a player in particular. And I asked the coach, what is something that you want to know about the player, but the only way you could know that answer is if the player tells you himself. There's no other way. You can't guess it. You can't go off his behavior and his body language. He literally has to look you in the eyes and he has to tell you this answer. This could be questions like, what is your why? What are you afraid of? What do you love? Why do you play the game? What's on your mind? Things like, what are you afraid of? I think I just said that. Questions that the only way you will know that is if he shares it with you. And then the next question to the coach was, who in the building has a strong enough relationship with that player to that the player feels safe to ask that question? So another thing, if you're frustrated with the player, you want to ask yourself, particularly if you have a good relationship with the player, you ask yourself, what do I want to know from this player? And you write those questions down, and then you find the time to ask that player. And it's a really great opportunity to be able to slow things down and to be able to invite the player to share what's on their mind. And then the last thing, the last option or opportunity for coaches to ask better questions is replace a statement with a question. So, for example, if you're trying to tell a player to say, "Hey, you got to be disciplined," or "Hey, you got to give your best effort," you ask the player, "What do you need to focus on in order to give your best effort?" And now they're doing the heavy lifting. If you're trying to tell the player, hey, you need to focus. You need to focus on what you can control. Instead of telling the player that, you ask them, hey, there's that phrase, focus on what you can control. What does that mean to you? Or what are some things you can control right now? All of a sudden, instead of you telling them, now you're asking them and letting them do the heavy lifting. So now you get a chance to hear how they think, how they make decisions. And so those are three ways that I've learned on how to help coaches be more effective with asking questions.
I love it. So I think one of the barriers is potentially time. That's what I've seen. What's a barrier that you've seen at a higher level on why coaches don't perhaps go the question route?
Time, strength of relationship. Some coaches don't want to ask questions because they don't know if their relationship's strong enough. Sometimes it's just they don't know how to yield that tool. I
Mm,
don't know what questions to ask. I don't know how to ask questions. How do you ask a question that'll move the needle? Some coaches, they're just not trained to do. They are focused on, let me give you information. Just sometimes it's their mental model. My job is to pour into the player, not pull out of the player. And so sometimes it's just a change of framework, and it's not coming from a bad place. It's coming from a place of, hey, let me continue to pour into you, so that you can learn. But the neuroscience states that uh, retrieval comes from practicing saying it out loud and executing it. And so sometimes it's helping coaches understand the science of asking questions and the benefit of retrieval that comes from it as you ask. And so those are some of the things that I've experienced on why coaches might not ask questions.
sure. You recently had a webinar that was fantastic on what parents and coaches should and shouldn't say before, during, and after a game. It's something I think that needs to be echoed. You could probably write a book on it. There's more parents and coaches, leaders that need to understand some of these tactics. So I'd love to kind of go through them piece by piece here. So, but before the game, let's go general first, Justin, and then I'll kind of fill in the gaps from there. What have you learned as things that coaches and leaders should and shouldn't say before a game for their student athlete to be set up for success? A few weeks ago, you had a webinar that was fantastic, talking to specifically sports parents about what to say and what not to say before a game, during a game, and after game. I thought it was brilliant. I would love to dive into some of that material. So let's first start, Justin, with before the game. A couple of things that you went through for sports parents out there was first, organize logistics. Second, set the energy. And third, direct attention. I think this is a great kind of tactical pieces for coaches and parents to take with them. Can we dive into those three before we go into during the game?
Absolutely. So the first one, logistics. This comes from my experience with pro sports teams. They have an entire multiple departments of people that get the logistics down, from when we're driving to the field, When we get off, where are the lockers? Packing the bags, making sure uniforms are in there. And it just gets rid of all those controllable mistakes. You have a whole team to do it. Now, with our kids, it's mom and dad's job. And obviously, it's the player's job as well to be able to do that. So, as a parent, one way to reduce friction in the process is making sure who's taking the kid to the field, what time are we leaving, is the bag packed the day before, do we have your uniform, do you have your cleats. How many times have we had moments for parents watching this when you're driving to the field and your child says, I forgot my cleats at home, or I don't have my uniform, or I didn't bring water. And so that's one simple little thing that parents can do, which is it's necessary, it's huge. That's why I included it as part of the things to get ready before the game. The next one is to set the energy, to set the tone. It's very, parents, they set the culture and the energy for the kids in the home. And so if a parent has a bad day at work, or you're having a problem in your life, whatever it may be, kids are very sensitive to it. So if you as a mom or a dad are driving and you're nervous for the game, or you're thinking, oh, this is the big game, you can't lose this, there's a lot of pressure, it's going to trickle down, and maybe not trickle down, you're dumping it on the child, and they're going to leave the car thinking, whoa, and they start making it a much bigger deal than it needs to be. And so set the tone with the music, set the tone with your face, softening your face and your body language and your energy and the tone of your voice, and just keeping it light and easy, whatever it needs to be. Just be very mindful of it. I'm not going to prescribe what kind of energy you need to give to your child, but just be mindful that you are giving energy by design or by default. And then the last one was, remind me what
Yep,
the last one was.
direct attention.
Directing attention. This is very important. One of the job for coaches and parents is to direct the attention of the athlete. A parent's job is to direct the attention of their child. And so it's parents, a lot of times, you're telling your kids not only where to look, but what to see. And so when you're telling your child, oh, this team is really good. Oh, this pitcher's so great. You're directing their attention to that. Oh, your coach is so bad. They're so horrible. Your team is so bad. You're not good at hitting this pitch. You're not good at this play. You're not good at whatever it may be. If you're not in the game, oh, I would be mad if I were you. Parents are actually doing these things. And so as a parent, you want to direct their attention to things that they can control. You want to ask your child, hey, what are you focused on today? What kind of teammate do you want to be today? What is your goal for today? Hey, what did you do in practice? What are some things you did in practice that you're excited about to do in the game? What are the fun aspects of playing the game? Why do you love to do it? As you can tell, you're directing attention through great questions instead of, oh, you better win today. Oh, are you nervous? Are you nervous? That happens a lot. And so it's a parent's job, one, not necessarily a job, but it would be beneficial if a parent was very mindful of where they're directing their child's attention before the game.
One of the questions that you suggested to perhaps avoid, I thought this was very interesting, and I agree, was perhaps thinking about removing the question, how are you feeling? Why do you think that is?
Yeah, and I love the language you're using. I'm not in the business of telling, there's no fine, like, yes, you have to do it. There's no black and white here. But I would recommend and suggest to be mindful and maybe not ask the child, how do you feel before a game? Now, what I'm not saying is you don't care about how your child feels. It does matter how they feel. It's your child. Like, they're human beings and they're your children. I'm talking about in terms of performance. How do you feel? What happens is then you give your child a window or an opportunity to look, to be introspective. If they feel nervous, they're going to add fuel to the nerves. Oh, I feel nervous. I feel scared. You know what, Dad? Now you're thinking about it. My shoulder kind of hurts. My ankle doesn't feel very good. You know what? My tummy hurts. And now all of a sudden, they're providing a JIC, just in case, a JIC, a just in case. And what you've now given them the liberty to do is to put on the table a little micro excuse. You know what? I'm kind of tired. You know what? I didn't sleep very good last night. How do I feel? Oh, I feel like I'm not going to do very good today. And then they start growing and give power to it. And then they're kind of priming their excuses. So they're telling mom and dad, if I don't play well, just so you know, I told you in advance my shoulder hurts. I told you in advance my stomach didn't feel very good. I told you in advance I didn't sleep very good last night. So a better question is, what are you focused on today? Hey, what's your objective for today? And so I would really consider before you ask that question, how do you feel? Just be mindful. Be mindful that that might be opening up Pandora's box and giving your child who's looking for excuses a perfect opportunity to give those excuses before they actually go out and play.
One of the quotes you say a lot, Justin, is that distraction is the enemy of success. And I was just reading Bill Belichick's book, which is phenomenal. One of the chapters he talks about is as a coach, one of his jobs is to eliminate distractions. And he went into a lot of great examples about being in all the Super Bowls he's been in, and how many distractions that we as fans don't even realize that come up. I mean, like hotel rooms is like a huge thing. And so one of the things he prides himself on is being able to eliminate the distractions. I'm kind of hearing the same thing from you, is as a parent, when we're driving to the game, I'm trying to eliminate distractions of how do you feel, what's going on after the game, do you have homework? I'm eliminating some of those distractions, kind of taking a little bit of lesson from you and Bill Belichick, and also the person that's driving their sixth grader to soccer practice. The principle is kind of all the same, isn't it? Is how do we eliminate distractions and thus focus on what's most important now?
Yeah, I like that. I love Bill Belichick. I love his process. I love how, I mean, the systems he's built. I mean, a perennial winner, just a winner. I struggle with the word eliminate distractions. I struggle with the phrase only because it's like it's like the term have no fear.
Mm.
It's we're humans. Like you're going to have distractions. You're going to have fear. Which distractions can we eliminate? Yes, there are some we absolutely can eliminate, create some parameters and some boundaries to eliminate. But then there's others that you can't eliminate, but you have to learn how to focus through those distractions. And it's being able to bring those to the forefront and say, okay, I'm going to eliminate these distractions. So I'll give you an example. There's some athletes I work with where we take a look at their energy and attention. Like what is sapping their energy and attention? And some of these we can eliminate. You, the athlete, don't have to be in charge of the tickets for your friends and family. Give it to your manager, give it to your agent. Boom, we just eliminated that distraction. You don't have to go on Twitter and put your name up or X and then look for all the things people are saying about you, which happens a lot. Let's eliminate it. Let's delete that app from your phone, eliminating distractions. But then there's some distractions you're not going to be able to eliminate. They're just going to bubble up. It's the distraction of ineffective thinking, the distraction of feeling something in your body where it doesn't feel very good, the distraction of beating up on yourself after a bad play or a bad at bat or whatever it may be. Then it comes down to how are you going to focus through those distractions? The distractions of a bad officiating call, the distractions of the weather, the distractions of the uncontrollable factors, variables that hinder performance. And so you ask yourself, as a parent and as a coach, what can I eliminate from my kids? And then what are the distractions that I need to teach my child to navigate through?
Very cool. So before we go into during the game, I would love to kind of peel back the curtain. You don't have to name the player, but what does it look like? I'm thinking like moments before they take the field or the platform, and you're having a conversation with them. I don't know if it's 30 minutes or 30 seconds, but take us in because maybe I think we can learn from you at a really high level for the parents out there. What does the conversation look like? What do some of the questions look like when they're just about to take the arena?
Yeah, it depends on the player. It depends on the sport. It depends on the context. It depends on the relationship. It depends on the rookie versus veteran. And so that's the first thing is it completely depends. So in terms of what parents can say to their kids is you just want to be mindful. And I'll use all of those variables to impact what kind of conversation or not I have with players. So I'll notice baseline behaviors. So I'm with these players all the time, or I'm with the coaches all the time. So I'll know how they act on game day. I can see it. I can see their baseline. Some are more focused, some are more happy, some listen have their headphones. You watch their habits. But then the moment it deviates, maybe they come into the locker room a little bit more down or quiet than normal. Maybe they come into the locker room a little bit more happy than normal and just kind of aloof than normal. Maybe they usually have a certain eating routine and eating pattern, but they're not doing that this time. Maybe rather than going to the cages, and I'll watch it and I'll pay attention. If it happens one time, then I'll just say, okay, I'll clock it. I'll be like, okay, that's interesting. They didn't do it this time. And then I'll watch the game. I don't say anything. Maybe after the game, I'll go and say, hey, I noticed that you, maybe not immediately after the game, but maybe the next day I'll say, hey, you came in notably down yesterday, or you came in notably happy yesterday, or you played video games when you normally play cards. Sometimes you don't do it in the moment. Sometimes you do it afterwards when not right before the game, because I don't want this conversation to deviate their focus. Again, going back to directing focus. Sometimes players will come up to me and they'll just be like, ooh, it's hot out here today. And I have to learn how to deflect and redirect their attention. Sometimes your child will be in the car and they'll say, ooh, this team we're playing is really good. Oh, I'm really nervous today. And you just normalize it. You say, yeah, they're really good, but you know what? You played against good teams before. Or yeah, they're really good. And so what are you going to focus on today? Or oh, you're really nervous. Oh, yeah, it's okay to be nervous. You played nervous before. It just means that you're excited. And so all you're doing practicing is redirecting what they're saying to you. And the same thing happens in the pros. With coaches and with players will come and I'll pay very close attention to not only what they say, but what's underneath what they're saying. And then you'll have a player come up to you and say, oh, I can't wait to get out there. And then you add fuel to that. Why? Why are you so excited? Oh, because I'm ready to go and tear it up. I'm ready to go and just practice. I can't wait to execute our first 5 plays. We got some stuff up our sleeve. I cannot wait. Oh, that's awesome. I can't wait for you guys to do it as well. And so you're very aware. And then there's some players who are quiet. And all it is a head nod or a little pat on the leg or a little slap on the helmet or whatever it may be, and no words need to be said. But one thing I do a lot, and a lot of coaches and as parents, just be very aware, observe and watch and notice. You have to understand baseline behavior so that you can pay attention to when it starts to deviate.
Two strategies that I use, Justin, when I'm advising teams in kind of the pregame before we go to during the game is I'll have each athlete write down their two controllable goals for the game. So at this point, I've done a pretty decent job at explaining what's inside and outside of their control as an athlete. I'll have them write down what two controllable goals do you have, and it's interesting because as the year goes on, they might start with I don't want to throw an interception. And well, then we have to talk about is that in your control or out of your control? And so they start to get a better sense of what's in and outside of their control. And then after the game, we're able to come back to those two controllable goals and kind of give ourselves a grade on a scale of 1 to 7. How do you think you did here? Did you or didn't you do it? And I think that's a good way to maybe detach from the outcome because we don't control the outcome or the scoreboard and get them to focus on what they can control. So that's a strategy. Another strategy that I learned from Carrie Walsh Jennings, greatest volleyball player of all time, who's on the show. One question that she asked herself before every single match, Justin, is how do I want to show up? How do I want to show up today? And she would go pen to paper and write that down. I want to show up as this, I'm not sure what she said, but this fierce competitor who handles adversity this way. And she was able to bring that idea to life before it actually happened. And so I've taken those two strategies with athletes I've worked with is we'll get on the call before a game and I'll ask two questions. What are your two controllable goals? And how do you want to show up? And I think that's been really productive in kind of my practicing and my environment. I'd be curious to hear your thoughts.
I love that. And to add to the power of that is to close the feedback loop and then come back afterwards. And so I have a golfer that I'm working with, PGA golfer. He writes his commitments before a round. This is what I'm committing to this round, and they're controllable behaviors. I'm committing to this. And then after the round, we close a loop by giving himself a score on a scale of 1 to 7, 7 being the best. How well did you do what you committed to? Just to show like, oh, I did what I said I was going to do, or you know what, I didn't, and why. Okay, that now we were able to explore that. And then it just kind of, you're able to go back and see and build confidence by saying, I did what I said I was going to do. Because a lot of times people will write goals or write commitments, and then there's no closing of the loop afterwards. It's like, okay, great. Okay, what's the next one? And what's the next one? And there's no follow-up from it. And so I think, again, you can do whatever you want to do, but I think there's extra power with the follow-up How well did you do what you said you were going to do? Another thing that I learned from a player is he developed a mental locker. So players will come into the clubhouse, you'll come into the locker room, and you'll take your street clothes off and you'll change into your sports clothes, baseball, football, basketball, tennis, whatever it may be. And one thing that he learned to do in his journal when it's not only does he want to change his clothes, but he wants to change his mind and his attention. And so he'll grab his journal and he'll start writing down everything that's on his mind. Struggles with his marriage. It could be things he has to do. It could be simply grocery shopping, chain like to-do list, things like that. His parents are sick or his mom is sick, kids, things with the kids, anything financial problems. So he puts it in his mental locker. He writes it down and he stares at it. And then he says this, I'll come back to this. I'll come back to this after the game. Closes it, puts it in his locker, and then he goes out and he does it. It allows him to tell himself, I'm not going to focus on this right now, but I'm not brushing it under the rug. I'm going to come back and pick this up after the game. After the game, he puts his clothes back on and he looks at the journal. He's like, okay, I'm ready to take this on again and go take care of business. So again, there's another thing, another strategy that people can do. You can close loops and do follow-ups with what you commit to do. And then you can have like a mental locker where you put your daily worries and fears and cares into a locker and put it aside so you can focus on your sport.
I'm a big believer in pen to paper. Justin, what have you learned about athletes being able to go pen to paper on some of these ideas, thoughts, and strategies?
I am the same way. I truly believe in the power of looking at your thoughts instead of through your thoughts, to be able to stare at it. I've had athletes tell me they'll look at what they wrote and they'll laugh. They'll be like, I cannot believe I believe that. But in their mind, it feels so real. But when they look at it, when they look at their thoughts instead of through their thoughts, they're like, oh my goodness, it gives them a different perspective. And another thing I believe as well is the weakest pen is stronger than the strongest memory.
Hmm.
So if there's something that you want to remember, I would write it down because you think you're never going to forget it, but no, you're going to forget it. And I'm also a huge fan of the best book you're going to write is the one you write to your future self. And so what a journal becomes, it becomes your notes and your frameworks and your lessons to your future self. And so many times when players are scuffling in August, I'll say, hey, do you remember when you were dominating in May? Go back and read what you wrote in May, lessons to yourself. And they'll go back and they'll be like, oh my goodness, look at what I wasn't doing this. Oh, I'm not doing this right now. I remember that drill. I remember that belief that I had. And the flip side as well, they'll be struggling in 2025. And then I'll say, hey, do you remember when you struggled in 2024 and you thought you would never get out of it? Go back and look at that month. And then they look at it and they're like, wow, I remember going through this adversity. I made it. Okay. I've gone through something hard before. I can do it again. If I got through that, I can definitely get through this. And so a lot of times it becomes a wonderful place to hold your receipts so you can go back and get an assessment of, of struggles, successes, and little notes from your past self.
Let's go to during the game. One of the things from the webinar is you talked about be the thermostat and not the thermometer. I think a lot of parents don't realize how often their student athlete actually looks at them during the game. They'd probably be surprised if they found out how many times they glance over and look. And I'm a huge believer in body language and the signals that you send. But let's start with broad and then we'll go deeper here. So be the thermostat, not the thermometer during the game now. What does this look like?
I was in broadcasting. I got my bachelor's degree in broadcasting, and you learn about a term when you're producing a live sports event. After a big shot or a big play or a game-changing situation, there's one camera that goes to the hero shot. So you'll go to the hero player, and then there's the frustrating shot. Then you go to the opposing coach to see how he or she responds. On the hero shot, you also go to the player and then you go to the coach to see how he or she responds. Same exact principle is in sports. When your child performs poorly or well, their eyes are going to go right to you. And so you want to be very mindful that you're you become a signal for how they should respond. If you were to say, if you were to model how you want your child to respond, what kind of body language would you have? And so make sure you have that kind of body language. We always say, like, be mindful of your face, fix your face, soften your face, your body language, the encouragement. If you want them to have a grit and tenacity look on their face, you have the grit and tenacity look on their face. If you want them to have joy on their face, you have joy on your face. They're going to get all these little clues. That's not the moment. Yes, there's going to be a moment where we're going to have a little bit of encouragement, like, let's go. But for the most part, you want to do it again on purpose. You don't want to go through a game and then ride the roller coaster of the game just like everybody else. You could be a competitive advantage to your child. And you can nudge them towards the attitude that they need to have just by how you carry yourself in the stands.
You can be a competitive advantage to your child. I've never heard it that way. What a great way to frame that. I think another thing too, Justin, is I know it sounds so simple, but sometimes brilliance is in simplicity, is maybe asking your student athlete, what are the words you want me saying during your game? Do you want me to say anything? Do you want me to be quiet? How do you want me to show up? What would work best for you? And I know some parents out there are like, yeah, pretty obvious advice, DJ. But if you haven't done that, you might discover something that maybe you didn't know about your student athlete. Maybe your student athlete doesn't like when you say anything at all because it's embarrassing. Maybe, so I think there's some power in just simply having the conversation. How do you want me to act in the stands? What would work best for you?
You are absolutely right. I think in the webinar, I don't know if I shared what we did with one of our athletes. Basically, maybe I did or didn't, but there's an athlete I have with his coaching staff, individual sport athletes. We had a meeting and we actually asked him that question. What do you want us to say? What do you want us to say when you're going through tough times? What do you want us to say when you're in the yellow and things are starting to fall off? What do you want us to say when we want you to relax? And we game plan all of that. How do you want us to look? How do you want us to be? How do you want us to sit? And we talk about that to everybody. I love that. And so you can sit with your child and you can say, hey, what can mom and dad do to help you be the best version of yourself on the field, on the court, on the course? What do you want us to say? Where do you want us to sit? How do you want us to be? And that's a simple, subtle conversation that could be very productive and very fruitful if you have that with them. And it just shows them that, hey, that you respect what they think and what would help them the most.
One of my favorite questions to ask coaches when I'm advising is if you want your team to be blank, you need to be blank, and you need to fill in the blank needs to be the same word. And so coaches will say, I talked to a UCLA coach last week. She said, calm. If I want my team to be calm, I need to be calm. Jeff Choate at Nevada football said, tough. If I want my team to be tough, I need to be tough. And then the next step is defining, what does tough look like to you and getting through that. It's a great question to get alignment with you and your program. And so I think what I'm hearing is it's actually the same thing with parents. So for the parents out there, if you want your student athlete to overcome adversity with a smile on their face, then you need to be able to overcome adversity with a smile on your face. I was at a basketball tournament just this last summer, and it was so interesting because I get a chance to kind of observe and look at kind of a bird's eye view similar to you. And I'm watching one of the girls, and she's complaining after every single call, and she's got bad body language and kind of rolling her eyes like this. And it was one of those stadiums or one of those high schools that you can kind of watch from up above. So there's kind of that walking track up above. I'm just watching the game, and the second half, I just kind of look around and look at the parents. And sure enough, there's one parent who, after every blow of the whistle, deep breath, rolls their eyes. And I'm just interested. I don't know if they're related. I'm just kind of watching. And I'm like, dude, I got to wait till after the game. I got to see if this is their dad. Sure enough, there's a relation here. Okay. And so I just think it was a monumental moment to go, the way you model is the way your kid is going to follow through for better or for worse. So a great question to ask yourself is if you want your athlete to be blank, you need to be blank. How would you fill that in?
Oh, that is an amazing exercise and activity and point. And it reminds me of like mirror neurons and motor neurons. You think about when somebody yawns, it makes you want to yawn. when you smile at someone, it makes them want to smile, unless they don't, and then it gets awkward. But yeah, usually mirror neurons activate motor neurons, and you can catch people's behaviors. No place is do you see that more evident than at home, with our kids and as we raise our children. And so I that's an outstanding exercise. I can't tell you how many times where we've done parent sessions, helping parents be better leaders in the home and win at home. And we're talking about strategies that they can use to help their children be confident and focused and relaxed under pressure, all of that stuff. And probably like yourself, you probably get this where parents will, the feedback they give is they're like, I needed
I
this. If
need
I'm going
this.
to help my child do this, I need to do this. And it's so true. And you're like, I'm glad there's that phrase, lessons are caught, not taught. And in your mind, you're like, oh, I'm glad that was caught, because that is so true. Not just you, mom and dad, but you yourself, DJ, myself, with our children, and being able to model, we have to model what we want our children, how we want our children to be.
Yeah, we're modeling machines. And I think the better coaches and parents can understand that you're constantly modeling. Even when you don't think you are, you're always modeling. And so I think every day, that's what excites me, Justin, is that every day is an opportunity for you to practice your modeling. I mean, every single day you get a chance to wake up and practice. How do you want to show up? And then how's that going to translate for your kids? Like that excites me as having a 1.5-year-old, is every day I get a chance to practice being this modeling parent. And some days you're not going to succeed. There's going to be days where you're like, or moments, I should say, where you don't model the behavior. But to me, it's like, it's such a cool way. And that's something I've been thinking a lot about in the last year and a half since having her is every day is an opportunity for me to model the behavior that I want to see from her. That invigorates me. That excites me. I mean, that warms my heart thinking about that every day.
Oh, that's beautiful. And to your point, I love that you said that. We're going to make mistakes as parents. We're going to mess up. And you being a parent yourself, like we have 19, 18, 17-year-old, my wife and I now, and you just feel as they continue to grow in new phases, we don't know what we're doing. Like we're trying to figure it out. And our children are different than other children, and every child is different. And I think one of the things that we can model as parents is how we navigate our own mistakes, and how we navigate our own stresses. And we're going to mess up, and how we choose to respond, and circling back with our kids and saying, hey, admitting it and being vulnerable, open and transparent, and saying, yeah, I didn't respond very well. This is what I learned. This is what I got to do better. And the kids see that, they're like, oh, okay, I need to do that when I mess up. I need to take ownership of my mistakes and how I don't effectively make decisions, or when I don't effectively respond to stress or failure. And so I think that's such a great point that you bring up. We're always modeling, even when you don't realize you are.
Let's transition to after the game. There's a lot of conversation and statistics about how many student athletes quit their sport because of the car ride home. It can be very pivotal. It can be an advantage. It can be a disadvantage. One of the things you talked about in your webinar that I think it was my favorite part. I think it's very sticky, and I think everybody can go take this like today, is you talked about context, emotions, and strength in relationships. Can we spend some time here? Because I think this is really key for parents and something that they can go do right now when they pick up their student athlete tonight.
Yes. CES, context, emotion, and strength of relationship. When you get in the car, that is a pivotal moment. And I was recently talking, and we were talking about meteor moments. So there's a crater in Arizona that was created over 50,000 years ago. And what they ended up discovering, so by the way, this crater is 4,000 feet in diameter, about 600 feet deep. It's massive. They found out that the meteor that created this crater that has lasted for over 50,000 years is 30 times smaller than the crater itself. So essentially, they're like, a meteor the size of a car created a crater the size of a city or a town, essentially. And then it got us thinking about meteor moments, those small little moments that make lasting impressions that the child and will never forget. The car ride home can become a powerful meteor moment. And if you are not careful about the conversation and how it is worded and what you say and what you don't say. It might be the bad side of a meteor moment than a good side of the meteor moments. And so CES, simply it's context, emotions, and strength of relationship. So when you get in the car as a parent, as the game is starting to wind down, you want to pay attention to the context. What is the situation? Just being rational about it. Knowing, okay, it's the beginning of the season. It was just a bad game, or it was a good game, or how did my child play? Trying to separate yourself, your worth as a parent and your child's worth as your child, your son or daughter, is not dependent on how that game went. And that needs to be easy to detect for your child. Has to be easy to detect. So just understanding the basic context. And you have to put things in perspective for the child as well, because they're going to be very hard on themselves. Maybe some kids do not care, but you just got to understand the context of your child. The E stands for emotions. You want to be very aware of the emotions of your child. And we could put it as simple as green, yellow, red. If your child is in the green, they're okay. They're bounced back. They can have hard conversations. They can talk. It's good. The baseline behavior. It's your child. Red, on the other hand, is they are very emotional. They're angry. They're mad. They're sad. And then there's the yellow, which is kind of borderline. You can tell things aren't great, but things aren't in the red. It's not devastating. But not only be aware of your own child's emotionality, you have to be aware of yours. You might be in the red because your child is in the green. You might be thinking to yourself, why is she okay with this? And it makes you even more mad. Or they are in the red, and then that makes you in the red. So you want to be very aware of your emotionality. And then you want to take a look at the strength of relationships. How strong is your relationship with this child? Is this something where even though they're in the red and maybe you're in the green, is your relationship strong enough to bear the weight of truth in that moment? There are some parents who have such a strong relationship with their kids, they can still communicate with their child and they can change their child from a red to a green. But maybe you don't have a very strong relationship, or maybe you're like, you know what, we can't have this conversation, or maybe it's the other parent, or it's other person. Maybe it's somebody else, like a grandparent or a friend or an older sibling who has to have this conversation. Just be aware of that. Now, what you do is you use this framework to identify different ways to approach the conversation, and then you brainstorm from there. It's going to do serve as is a filter to help you decide how are you going to have this conversation, not what you're going to say, how or if or when you're going to have it. So it might be, yes, I'm going to have this conversation. It might be, no, you know what? Hey, where do you want to eat, daughter? Where do you want to eat, son? It might be something as simple as, hey, you were awesome. It might be something as simple as, that was uncalled for. Like what you did, how you treated, it depends. And every situation is contextual. And so using the CES framework might help you as a mom or as a dad navigate and decision make how you're going to have that conversation.
What's your advice if there's red in the car? Is it, hey, if anybody in here is feeling red, we shouldn't be having some conversation or we should save it? What do you think if there's red in the car, whether it's you? Sometimes, like you said, maybe it's the spouse sitting in the passenger seat that's red, and maybe you're not. Who knows who's in red? But if somebody is in red, what's the advice in that role?
I think you just like pro sports, you need to plan ahead for it. You need to have a conversation. Starts with you as the parents. Okay, what are we going to do? Like, is this something we want to talk about in the moment? If I'm in the green and you're in the red, that's a great point. One parent might be in the red and one might not be in the red at all, and then the scuffle becomes between those two, and not the child. And the child's like, oh, like what is going on here? I think have a conversation before the conversation and having a discussion around that, especially the parents. Another thing, and I don't believe that there's a lot of shoulds. There's being mindful of situations, because there are moments where there was a time in my life where I would say, do not have a conversation when your child is in the red. Do not have that conversation. In the professional world, pro sports, I think that's more likely the case. Sometimes a coach, pro coach, you're going to give the player some steam, some space to like let off the steam, and then we'll have a conversation. But in the parent child dynamic, that's different. That's different. As a parent myself, if my child is in the red and disrespect was involved, I'm not going to be like, oh, let me let you get steam off. No, we're going to have a very difficult conversation. That was actually unacceptable what just happened, and we're going to have this conversation. So I would say be mindful in order to be mindful of your state and be mindful of how you want to have the conversation. If your child's in the red, sometimes it's like diffusing a bomb. You want to be okay. What questions am I going to ask? How am I going to lean into this? How am I going to approach this? How am I going to set the table and set the stage? Maybe I want to address her or his attitude that I did not like. Maybe I start with the good. Maybe let's go to their favorite restaurant first. Let's get some food in us. Let's talk about it. And so you want to be very deliberate and intentional with how you do it. I think that's what it really comes down to, doing things by design and not default, pausing and really thinking about it. There's a coach I'm working with. When he sees the team is about to lose, and this is a professional coach. When the team is about to lose and he knows he is about to get crushed from the press conference, everyone's going to try to just he knows what the narrative is going to be. He will start thinking in his mind, number one, what am I going to tell the team in the locker room? Like, what is the message going to be? And what is the message that I'm going to give to the press, the media? He starts thinking about this sometimes 2, 3 minutes before the game ends. If the team ends up coming back and winning, oh, great. Then plans change and we're going to be happy. But I asked him, when did he start doing that? He said he started to do it because there have been moments early in his career. He's a veteran coach now. Early in his career, he didn't do that. And he would go into the locker room in the red and he would say things he regretted. He would add to the emotions. He'd go to the media and say things, and then they were turned into memes, and it was turned into sound bites that he had to go back on. And then Monday and Tuesday comes, and he's like, "Why did I say that?" And now, because he knows himself, he plans ahead. So maybe as a mom or a dad, if you see how things are shaping up, you can sit there and start thinking yourself, okay, take a deep breath. How am I going to frame this conversation? What am I going to say? What am I not going to say? And how am I going to approach this car ride home?
I would love to talk for a moment about the relationship with failure. One of the things that I've seen from athletes at whatever level is the best have a great relationship with failure. And it can be really hard as a parent when your student athlete is, I don't know if you want to put it in the category just as a perfectionist or the standard is really high, the expectations are high, whatever you want to call it. They don't have a great relationship with failure. And sometimes parents are like, if they only knew how great they actually performed, but they're spiraling on one mistake or their standard is really unachievable because it's perfection and we can't get there. I would love to hear what's the advice to parents out there to help their student athlete have a better relationship with failure.
I think we could all learn from you and the exercise that you just gave us early in this conversation. We can apply that principle. If how is it if I want my child to have a good relationship with failure, then I must have a good relationship with failure. And if I'm mom or dad listening to this, the first question I'm going to ask myself is, what's my relationship with failure? What is my definition of success for me as a parent? And also, what do I hope my child's definition of success is, and what I hope their relationship of failure is? What do I want it to be based on the arc of their athletic development, and not even athletic development, their human development? Because once you learn how to navigate failure and deal with it, going back to that phrase, it's going competitive advantage. It's going to be a competitive advantage for life. And so I think that is the first thing to do. Look at yourself. What is as mom and dad, my relationship with failure? And then it's because you model it. Going back to this thing, you model it. And it comes with being very deliberate about it and practicing it and talking about it and creating mechanisms and systems around it and sharing There's a lot of different things you can do. You could do failure priming. You can come up with a list of what are all the ways you might fail today in practice and in your games. How do you want to respond when that happens? That's called failure priming. You could take their sports heroes who they absolutely love. Let's say they love Tom Brady. Let's say they love LeBron James. Let's say they love they have their favorite basket, Caitlin Clark, Serena Williams, whoever it may be, and then you show them examples of, hey, look at when Serena lost. Hey, look at Caitlin Clark went 0 for 7 from three. Oh, look at this your favorite player struck out 4 times today, just to normalize failure, because we live in this Instagram world where all we see is their highlights. Hey, look at your favorite pitcher gave up the game losing home run yesterday. Look at Tom Brady threw 4 interceptions in this game. Can you believe that? Wow, look how they responded. So you can do model their heroes. You can model it for yourself. You can share with your child moments in your life that you failed, and how in the past and even in the current, and how you're navigating it. You can show them past experiences of them failing in the past and say, hey, remember when you failed back here? Look at what you learned from that, to give them examples of it. And so there are so many different ways. And I think if you hit it from so many different angles, that helps to reinforce this lesson that failure isn't a bug in human performance, it's a feature. It's part of it. And part of your skills and part of the things that's going to separate you from being great is being able to get up after you fail. How fast can you bounce back? And I remember being with the Red Sox one time. We taught a lesson. We talked about the bouncy ball, the resilience of a bouncy ball. And I held up a bouncy ball and I held up a baseball. And I said, which one is more resilient? And they said, the bouncy ball, of course. I said, why? And the players were like, oh, because it's what it's made of. It's made of rubber. And I said, well, if I take the bouncy ball and the harder I throw it on the ground, what's going to happen to the ball? They say the higher it bounces. And that goes into Nassim Taleb's work of anti-fragile. Essentially is failure makes you better. It actually makes you stronger. And so I handed every single player a little bouncy ball. And this was one of the coaches in the Dominican Republic. The pitcher on the mound was having a bad inning. And I'm sitting there watching the game, and the pitching coach walks out there and he pulls out of his back pocket a bouncy ball and he holds it up. And I wasn't there to hear the conversation, but I saw the pitcher just nod his head and he goes back. And honestly, I can't even remember what ended up happening. But I remember the stickiness of that situation. And all the players had like the little bouncy ball in their locker room, just as a reminder that no matter how bad things get, I'm going to bounce back faster. And our competitive advantage. Here's the phrase of the day. How do you establish a competitive advantage? Is we bounce back faster from failure. And that's something that we can teach our kids by constantly having these conversations around it. Another example, before a practice, before a drill, you can tell your child, part of this drill is not just sharpening your skills and getting better at the mechanics, but also I want to see how fast you could bounce back from adversity. You're going to mess up. I'm going to make this drill very, very hard. I'm going to yell at you. I'm going to put pressure on you. Part of the drill is how well you deal with adversity and failure. And then when the drill's over, how'd it go? And then you can train them to be exposed to failure moments. And so all of these different ways and some can help you teach your child how to bounce back.
I love the bouncy ball. I like the phrase, it's the bounce that counts. That's something we wrote in Push the Sled, I think is very sticky as well. I think another thing to add to it too, Justin, is closing the loop on some of those questions you asked before the game. So we went through some of those questions. How do you want to show up? Your two controllables. What do you want to do? So if we can close the loop on some of those questions and maybe they did some of those things, well, that reframes my perspective, right? Because I maybe just see failures I lost and the scoreboard says so. But if you did some of the things that you set out to do, it starts to change my perspective a little bit. My relationship with failure grows when I detach a little bit just from the scoreboard and focus more on some of those other things. So I think that's another area too, is to close the loop on some of those questions that you asked in the pregame. Coach John Tower coaches University of St. Thomas basketball up here in Minnesota, Justin. One of the things he said that was so interesting was that oftentimes parents will drop off their kid, and what do they always say? They say, hey, go have fun. And then after the game, they go pick them up, and what's the first thing they say? Did you
Did
win?
you win?
There's a gap there. And so one of the things he really illuminated for me was the same question you ask when you drop off needs to be the same question you ask when you pick up. And that was so brilliant to me because I've seen it all the time where it's go have fun. Did you score or did you win? So I think that's another thing too. If we try to talk about like closing the loop, make sure your questions in the front end are the same as the questions in the back end.
Oh my goodness. That is beautiful. I've never heard that, but it is so true. And what you're touching on a very important principle. There's a organizational psychologist named Eduardo Salas, and he worked with NASA, and he's an expert in team dynamics and team effectiveness. And he was asked in an interview as I was listening to, they said, "What is a one singular strategy that we can do as a team in order to enhance team effectiveness and learning and growth?" And Eduardo did not miss a beat. He didn't even take time to think. And he goes, "Master the debrief, debrief, enhance and have more productive debriefs to anything. Debrief the meeting, debrief the training, debrief the performance, and get really look back and pull out the lessons from that." And that's what we're talking about, getting better at the debrief, closing the loop after the game, after the practice. What did you learn? Did you have fun? What was so fun about it? What did you enjoy about it? And not just did you win, but what did you do? And so that we always talk about leading up to the game, but we don't talk about closing the loop and the power of the debrief, because that's where we can really highlight and tag the lessons being learned and really close the loop there. And I love that you took us there, the power of the debrief and circling back.
Very cool. As we close down, I ask the same type of question in all of my kind of 500 podcasts, Justin, and specifically for coaches, because I think that's the people that we're really directing this conversation to. You've been around some of the best coaches that this sports world has to offer, and we've also been talking a lot about listening and asking questions and learning from others. You're a lifelong learner. So the question is this: what's the greatest piece of advice that a coach or a manager has taught you, and how have you been portraying that in your coaching?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I There's a lot of coaches I admire. There are a lot of coaches I am inspired by as they lead their teams and other people. And there was one coach in particular who I just love the way he prepares. I love the way he communicates, the relationship that he builds, his attention to detail. He's a scientist and he's a great communicator to the group. And then one on one, he's incredible. And one day I walked up to him and I said, "How did you learn to be such a great leader?" I know he's a reader, he listens to podcasts, he loves videos, he's a voracious absorber of information. And I was looking for that silver bullet. So like, how did you become such a great leader? Because he believes that leaders could be developed. And his answer shocked me. It actually surprised me. It wasn't what I thought. And he goes, "You know how success leaves clues?" I was like, "Yes." Okay, that's how you became a really good leader. He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "So does failure." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Some of the people I learned most from in my career are the worst leaders and the worst coaches I've ever had in my life. And then I do opposite." And that really resonated with me. And he said, "You don't judge. You don't, I'm not here to point a finger at." He goes, "Coaching is hard." And a lot of times they were just doing the best they could with the knowledge that they had. But I saw the effects and the secondary and the effects of the effects and the tertiary effects. And he said, I noticed it, I looked at it, and then I thought to myself, okay, what can I do to not be like that? Let me invert those behaviors. And it really opened my eyes to pay attention to not just good examples, but maybe not so good examples. And not just to cast blame and to say, oh, they're a bad coach or they're a bad leader. No, because like I just said, a lot of times they just don't know better. You're trying the best you can. You're doing the best you can with the knowledge you have. But what can we learn from that? How can I? There's a question that I heard a CEO once say. They said, if I were to get fired and a new CEO were to come in, what is the first change that CEO would make to this organization? I need to make that change right now. And that's been a powerful lesson I've been learning. I've been trying to not just get clues from success, but clues from failure, and that has been incredibly beneficial.
Hmm, brilliant.
And actually, I have a question for you.
Sure.
You've been doing this. This is your 500th episode. You have had unbelievable interviews and conversations with some of the best athletes and coaches in the world, authors and speakers, and it's been incredible. What is one of the biggest lessons that you've learned after doing 500 of these?
The first thing that comes to my mind, Justin, is the power of story. The best episodes that I've done, the ones that have gotten the most hits, the most feedback, are the ones that have included the most stories. And I think as human beings, and I'm a little bit biased as a speaker, I think stories are sticky and stories are memorable. And I think stories really connect with what you're saying. I think you get two coaches up there, one that just says all the X's and O's, one that tells a little bit of a story about it. The kids, the student athletes are going to be much more gravitated towards the one that can have a little bit of a story. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be this big thing, but you do such a great job at this. And that's why your information is so memorable, is because you can tie in a story. I think after 500 episodes, the importance of stories when you're coaching or teaching or presenting goes a really, really long way. And that's something that 7 years ago, Justin, that wasn't on my radar. That I didn't understand the
Right.
impact of that. But now being on the receiving end, I'm like, holy cow, it's a huge part of it. So that would probably be one of the main ones. The first one that comes to my mind. I could probably give you 500 more, but that's probably good enough for today.
That is amazing. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. All right. As we close down, how can my listeners best support you?
I am very easy to find on social media, Instagram, Twitter, at Justin Sua. And if you just head over there, if you click the link in the bio, and you'll have access to my podcast and my newsletter. I'd love to hear from you all.
The newsletter is fantastic, by the way, coaches and parents. If you liked this conversation, a lot of the same stuff is going to be in the newsletter that comes out every Monday. Make sure to get that. Justin, thanks for celebrating number 500 with me. Thanks for being a friend and a mentor. I look forward to continuing this dialogue and getting you back for maybe episode 600 next year.
Let's go. That's awesome. Thank you so much for having me, brother.